I don't think Charlie's teachers liked him very much. Do you guys?
The feeling was mutual.
Yeah. So this is interesting, right? This is something that I want to explore further, right? So this is, again, an example of how Charlie and I are so impossibly different and have had such different reactions to almost every single thing that's happened since 2008. Right? So to get to your question, no, the Department of Education shouldn't be abolished. That's a ridiculous talking point. Should it be streamlined? Can things be more efficient? Always. But so I want to take us back to 2010, when Governor Scott Walker was first elected, right? And you were writing op-eds in your high school paper, right, about how great he was for busting up teachers' unions, right? Your teachers were going to Madison, Wisconsin, right, where I'm from, right? They were busting themselves up to show solidarity with their other teachers, right? And Charlie didn't have the human capacity to wonder why, right? Why did they need to stand in solidarity with folks in where it gets hot here, it gets real cold in Wisconsin, I'll tell you that right now. They were out there in the freezing cold, just asking for very simple things, right? Very, very simple things. Can we collectively bargain for our pay? Can we collectively bargain for our health care? Can we go and sit down as equals with the folks that employ us, just to have a conversation about what it's like and what we need to get by, because teachers are serving the public. Right? It's a public service job where they get up every day. It is thankless. I don't care when folks say they don't work in the summer. I know that they do. It is a ridiculous talking point to say otherwise. We know that we have to value these folks, right? So the Department of Education does something very interesting, right? And I want to hear what your solution for this would be, because I don't know what it would be. So the Department of Education is responsible for making sure that vulnerable children in school districts are protected. Kids with disabilities. Right? They make sure that kids who are LGBTQ are valued. They make sure that transgender people, who Charlie does not even acknowledge their existence, can... No?
Wrong.
Okay.
Value their existence. How dare you say something like that? Like, seriously, value their existence? Yeah, you should sit down. I mean, seriously.
So let's talk about it.
Value their existence.
Wait.
Seriously.
Wait.
Value their existence.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Okay. Do you acknowledge there's more than one gender?
There's two genders. Yes, there's more than one gender.
Do you acknowledge that trans...
The question was about the Department of Education.
Would you acknowledge that transgender kids need special protections in school?
Absolutely, yes. That could be done on a local basis. It doesn't take a federal bureaucracy to look after LGBT students.
There's two issues that I have right now. And I know that it's still about the Department of Education because they are the ones that enforce this regulation. So what I think is interesting, right, is that if you turn this over to local control, right, so then the kid in Scottsdale might be protected and the kid in South Phoenix might not. Right? We know that this creates a patchwork of protections where we can't even define what it means to be American, because one American, 10 miles apart, right? And I'm shocked that you're offended, because you would hit us all for being offended in trade.
Actually, I'm not offended. I'm laughing.
Okay. But so what I think you're missing, right, is that when you say that, and again, I misspoke, right? But when you say that transgender folks can't identify that way, right? Or that there's not more than one gender, right? You're not valuing their existence.
No, actually
right?
I am. I'm saying
so
there's two genders, and this idea that there's 47 genders and counting is wrong. It's non-biological, it's anti-science, and it's harmful
of all
to
people
society.
To be anti-science.
Yeah. It is anti-science. Just because Brown University says there's 47 genders and pick one doesn't mean it necessarily is true. They used to call this gender dysphoria, okay? There's two genders. Now, can someone who might be born as a man choose to be a woman? Yes. There's two genders. Pick one. I value their existence. How dare you say something like that? Okay, back to what I was saying. So you were a lot there. So Department of Education.
Can you stop talking over her? Can you let her do her job, please? She put a lot of time into this.
All of the Department of Education is what we want to hit.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So do you have something to add about the role of the Department of Education?
Can you
to abolish it?
Well, I'm curious. Can you name a specific inefficiency or program specifically from the Department of Ed that is inefficient?
Pell Grants.
Okay, tell me more about it.
FAFSA. The waste within Title IX funding, the waste within every single inner city grant that I've ever come across, the $160 billion that they indiscriminately send throughout the country that has no impact on test scores or urban poverty levels or literacy rates. So the entire thing is a waste. and it could be better done on a local. So you said, hold on, you said a great point. You said, what about the students that are discriminated against in South Phoenix? Well, that's why we have a court system. You don't need a federal bureaucracy to adjudicate that. You can sue, go through the circuit court system, and go up to the Supreme Court. You don't need a federal government bureaucracy to go after every sort of injustice. That's why we have a Supreme Court. I believe in the courts. You don't need a federal bureaucracy to go after that.
Do you think that the mom in South Phoenix? Yes, I tell you what he said. Do you think that the mom in South Phoenix, right, who works 3 jobs, right, is up late trying to take care of her kids, right, and then her kid is discriminated against in school, right, and a lawyer costs X amount of money, right, and public defenders are overworked, they're not at the level that they need to be to take on a school district or the state if it got to that level, or to go all the way to the Supreme Court, right? So then this becomes, again, the idea of privilege, right? You assume that everything works for everyone.
We're going to have to talk about privilege. I'm sorry, this is getting out of control. Okay, seriously.
You've been talking a lot. Can you give me another 30 seconds and then you can go on?
Yeah,
go on.
Sure.
Right? So this is the idea that, right, you assume that everything will automatically work for you. Right? You wake up every day and every system works for you without having to worry about whether or not you can access it in the first place. If you are a person of color and your child is being discriminated against in South Phoenix, you do not have access to the courts. Right?
What about the ACLU? Don't they represent a lot of students that are...
Absolutely.
Oh, so they represent everyone.
So they represent everyone. It's not for everyone, right? These folks do not
All it takes is one court decision and then they can't do it again or else they go to jail.
Do you think that that's how the justice system works in this country?
That actually is how it works. That's how the Little Rock Nine worked. That's how integration in the South works. That's how desegregation works. That's how the Civil Rights Act works.
You don't get to talk about that.
Actually, I do get to talk about that.
You don't get to claim these great civil rights wins as part of your legacy.
It was actually the Republican Party that had all those great civil rights wins.
And that's another lie. You know, my mom's watching at home, right? And she taught me not to lie, so I won't do it, right? And hi, Mom, I love you.
Was Strom Thurmond a Democrat or a Republican?
But so here's the issue, and I'm not going to get into the semantics with you. What I'm talking about is the idea that he can take credit for all of these things and then twist them historically to serve the talking points of the people that already have bought into Turning Point. You're not going to get new people when you take credit for what the black community did or what the Latino community did or what the LGBT community does every single day. You don't get to do that. And before you start talking again, you have to understand that this is an identity issue. And you never get to talk about this.
Let's stop. Stop with the identity.
You don't get to talk about this like that.
I'm going to keep talking. If you want to interrupt me, you can. I'm just going to keep talking.
You've done it every second that I've talked into the microphone.
Can I respond?
Yes, a response,
Okay.
and then move on. Got it?
Privilege. What a bunch of nonsense. If you want to be, seriously, I mean, privilege. Everyone has some element of privilege. Some people are smarter.
I have privilege.
Let me finish, okay? I let you do your piece. Privilege. Okay? Sure. Privilege. If you want to succeed in this country, you do 3 simple things. America is still a meritocracy. You graduate from high school, you get a job, and you get married before you have kids. No matter your skin color, no matter where you come from. Are some people born with less? Yes, absolutely. Do we need increased opportunity? Yes, absolutely. And every policy I advocate for is increasing opportunity. Not perpetuating victimhood. Not trying to say, you're privileged because you're a certain color and you're a certain gender. Or you're privileged because you come from a certain part of the country. Instead, talk about the policies, the data, the math. You know what doesn't have privilege? Mathematics. You have not refuted a singular data point that I have brought up tonight.
So let's do
not
this.
one.
So let's do this.
Is math all of a sudden privilege now?
Okay,
That's fine. We're done. Thank you.
So can I ask about a specific policy that you would advocate for?
Please.
Right. So white people in this country, their average net worth in this country is $171,000.
Asians are actually $192,000. So where's your Asian privilege? Indian Americans are $188,000. Where's your Indian American privilege? There are twice as many white people living in poverty than black people. Where's your outrage for all the poor white people in West Virginia and Appalachia that were left behind from the disastrous anti-coal policies that your wonderful President Barack Obama passed and left entire regions of this country without work, without self-worth, without the capacity or ability to earn money?
All right. Andy, do you want to respond to that?
He asked me a question.
But I didn't get to finish it. That's part of it. So when you ask a question, something at the end is asking you to respond. And
Go ahead.
Skip that.
I'll keep my...
So, okay, so if white folks in this country have $171,000 of average net worth in this country, right? And the average black net worth in this country is about $17,000, and the average Latino net worth in this country is about $20,000. Can you explain to me how you would create a more equitable economic system that actually tries to, and you tried to claim equity earlier in the policies that you're talking about, but equity would be if we took money that we know is already there, right? We know that it's offshore, we know that folks aren't paying their taxes, we know that corporations like GE are paying close to 0% in taxes every single year, and we know that if we created this economic platform that rewarded you, right, and not the wealthy few and not the privileged few, then we know that there would actually be more growth, more economic opportunity for everyone, right? Charlie's vision of economic opportunity serves very
Asian
few
Americans, white
people.
Americans, African Americans, Indian Americans, and all Americans. Yes, all Americans will benefit from
I
my
would
vision of
love to
economic
talk to some
opportunity.
folks about whether they think that Charlie's message of economic freedom actually includes them, because I know
You
for
know
a
what?
fact that
Actually,
it doesn't.
it's interesting. I see a lot of
White,
people
white,
of color
white,
here.
white, white,
People of color,
black.
person of color, 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 person of color. It's interesting. Talk to them. They'll have some interesting sound bites.
So-
Also, you should come to our Young Latino Leadership Summit, which is the nation's largest Young Latino Leadership Summit for young, freedom-loving conservatives, all of which are bilingual, first-generation young Latinos that are all
you think that I'm a
conservative.
leader.
So there's a lot of words. Go ahead. Sorry, I want to.
Yeah, no, so I think we've actually exhausted that concept.
I'm having a great time. I don't know about everyone here.
Is everyone enjoying themselves?
We are actually going to open the floor to questions.
Let's do it.
So
That'd be
I
great.
guess if you want to ask these guys a question, just raise your hand and I can pick on you. Yeah, you. And then we'll hand a mic to you too, so we can hear your question. Oh, right here.
Yeah, I'm having
Yep.
fun. It's good.
Ken, my man, how are you doing?
Doing very well. Okay, I'm a senior here at ASU, studying history. I just want to ask Randy about the fact with Maricopa Community Colleges.
Yes.
Since the state 2 years ago took funding out of its budget, and you're saying that since that tuition has risen. Can you?
I said it will rise, just to be specific. I don't know about the specifics of the community colleges.
Well, the former vice chancellor of the of services said in an interview with KTAR when the initial budget went through the legislature, said that only 1% of state funding actually is the revenue for the entire Maricopa Community College's budget. This main budget is from property taxes and tuition is mainly from property taxes. The only thing that actually does affect is any future initiatives that the colleges actually do, which as a employee for the Maricopa Community Colleges, we're still growing, we're still serving many different demographics of students, and so I just wanted to get where the facts are coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that you made an interesting point, right, about property taxes funding schools, right? So you work for the system, you said, right, Ken? You work for Maricopa County Community Colleges? Which is a nicer school, Scottsdale Community College or South Mountain Community College?
They're all nice.
Which one would you rather go to?
Visit all of them. Personally, I live near Mesa Community College, but I visited all of them. I used to work for the Student Loan Support Services team, which I agree with Charlie, if we didn't have a Department of Education, it would be a lot easier to do my job. But all the schools are nice and are still thriving without.
I hope that they serve all their students really well. I think that's important. I'm sure that you do a great job. But I want to talk about the way that those schools are funded, right? When you look at the way that you would fund property taxes, whose home values are higher? Is it when we go down to Broadway and Central, and those property taxes have to fund Roosevelt schools and then South Mountain Community College? Is it houses in Scottsdale that have incredibly high property values, and then thus they pay more in taxes, but that goes straight to their school, right? So you have to think about who is being served by this, right? So you know that it's an inequitable education, right? Because if you went to South Mountain Community College, and I'll try to wrap that up, I know I'm taking a long time, but if you tried to look at it in creating equity, this is not happening within the community college system right now because of the funding sources. And the same for K through 12.
Can I comment? Yeah. So first of all, the goal of creating absolute equity is both impossible and immoral. You should never have absolute equity in wealth or equity of talent. So you keep mentioning that. I will say it's both impossible and immoral. But secondly, you actually just made a great argument for school choice, that students that grow up with worse property values should be able to go to a school that has higher property values. So they're able to take their money and go to a better school if they're within a failing school, which is exactly a good argument for school choice, which is everything that we advocate for, which would actually pursue more towards equity, which is everything that you believe in.
So school choice is a lie, right?
It's
School
a
choice is
success
lie.
story that has lifted millions of people out of poverty, including
So-
many of whom that I know.
So like I said, I read your book, right?
Thank you.
I didn't super enjoy it, as you can imagine, but I read the book. And he created, and so I want to talk about Julio, right? Because you brought up Latinos earlier. Right?
Yes, just so everyone knows, Julio is a fictitious character that I created in the book of what a free society can create for an at-risk Latino immigrant in the country through a free society, lift out of poverty into success. Just so everyone knows.
So to be more frank, Charlie created a fake Mexican to prove his point.
Wow. Okay.
And I didn't like that.
So
I didn't like that.
So if I would have called him Jake, it would have made it less true?
It would have made it more real coming from you, right? And this
Really?
is-
Or how about if his name was Jovan? I seriously, like, what are you trying to get at here?
So I want to go back to
Like,
the.
why is it always race with you? Seriously, what's with your leftists and race? It's like if you created a fake Mexican. Well, actually, he might have been from Nicaragua, or he might have been like. So seriously, like, what are you trying to say with all this race stuff?
Well, I want to get back to the answer about school
I'm
choice.
genuinely curious.
So I want to talk.
I even mentioned race once, but you keep on mentioning it.
I'd really like to take 2 more questions.
Can I just quickly talk about school choice?
Ask a question.
Can someone ask me about school choice?
Okay.
I don't bite.
All right, you want to stand?
All right, so this question I have for Charlie.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. When you say that Republican states have thriving economies and you use this as your evidence for low taxes working, yet 84% of the states that receive more federal, or 84% of the states that receive more federal
right.
money than they pay for are Republican. And this includes things like WIC, TAMP, food stamps.
So you're talking about like Alabama and Mississippi.
Well, 84% of the states are Republican that receive more than they pay in. So here's my question. When Republican states receive the lion's share of government benefits, which are paid for by taxes, how are you able to attribute economic success in these states to free markets and to limited government?
It's a beautiful question.
It's actually very easily proven. So you're talking about this wonderful Democrat fantasy that somehow Republican states are mooching at the trough of others. First and foremost, you're talking mainly about 6 states, which are most in the South, which are some of the poorest states in the country: Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Arkansas. And they're not poor because they're Republican. They're poor for many different sorts of reasons. But you're asking, so 84% of all tax dollars are to where exactly? To the poorest states?
84% of the states in which they receive more federal money than they pay in.
Yes. Go to poor states that happen to also be Republican, and they're getting richer thanks to economically free policies and right-to-work policies and pro-growth policies, and they're seeing a net increase in taxpayers, a net increase in businesses, a net increase in people that are actually paying into the government services. Tennessee, for example, is an unbelievable economic success story where they see businesses moving to Tennessee. That was one of those previous states like that. Kentucky's another state. It's a fake Democratic talking point. And another thing, so you look at some of the wealthiest cities in the country, they also happen to be in Democratic states. They're also some of the worst run cities. You look at the most poor centralized areas in America that receive federal funding without the state argument. You look at Philadelphia, you look at Oakland, you look at Chicago, you look at
It's a really good pivot.
all the good, well, actually cities and states pivot, they're actually quite interrelated. So the poorest cities, why are all the poorest cities in America happen to always be run by Democrats? The highest crime with the highest joblessness and the most screwed up states all happen to be run Democrats. I don't remember a Republican mayor of Philadelphia or Oakland or Chicago or Milwaukee or Detroit or all the cities that happen to be screwed up are all run by Democrats. So to answer your question, the states that are most economically free are flourishing at the highest rate. They have a net increase of citizens. They see businesses per capita raising dramatically, business startups rising, and blue states are bleeding taxpayers and bleeding citizens.
But so you just contradicted yourself, right?
No, I actually did.
Let me try to answer
actually
your
did.
question. Right? The reason for that is because, as you said yourself, those are some of the poorest states, right? Despite all the freedom in the world and all these free markets that have been created by Republican governors and Republican legislatures.
Well, Alabama just recently become red in the last 18 years.
It seems as
so.
if these folks just still aren't doing that great. And I wonder if it's because those states do not have the tax revenue to support a public education system that serves their students. I wonder if it's because they can't afford to pay good teachers to serve their kids so that they can go out and create the economic boom that we're all desperately looking for, right? We all want that, right? But when you ask that question, right, and there's also a healthcare component to it, right, where we know that in a lot of those states, they have incredibly poor health outcomes, right? And so they have to lean on federal government to just take care of their citizens. Those states that he mentioned aren't even doing their basic job of taking care of the people that pay their taxes or elect them or live there, right? So that's the reason that they're getting the federal funding, to answer your question.
All right. One more question, yeah? Try to get someone in the back, all the way over there. You.
That was a really bad choice. That was not a good choice. You won't like it either.
Hey guys.
Oh, really?
I'm Shay. I'm a senior here. I have questions for both of you.
Shay, I've never met you before. This is crazy.
I know, right?
Randy, first, I'm going to start with you. You mentioned that monopolies are against the American creed, which is very correct, and competition is necessary, which is also correct. But how do you defend the monopoly teachers union have created and how they kill the competition?
That's a great point.
Charlie, I have a question for you too. You cited Amazon as a monopoly, which is contributing a lot of good.
He did, and I actually said it's a great company that might be a monopoly.
So you're comfortable with it being a monopoly as long as it's going to control?
Well, so the only part of their monopoly is Amazon Web Services, which owns 53% of the market share. Well, no, I'm actually correcting him. You're not up here. I am. Thank you very little. So go ahead.
Again, you suggested that it is, even if it's a monopoly, it is contributing good. And Milton Friedman, in his book Capitalism and Freedom, attacks monopolies. He blames the government that creates them, but he still attacks them and suggests that more free market and more free trade would fix the problem of monopolies, which are this latter, which is a policy that the current administration is against.
I mean, I'll take the monopoly, then you could take the teacher unions. So Milton Friedman did not say that. Milton Friedman said in all of his writings and all of his, he wrote in The Moral Case for Capitalism, he said that all monopolies are created by government, but if a monopoly is created out of free market forces, it usually does not do harm for the consumer, and he cited De Beers Diamonds as one of those examples. So get your Milton Friedman right, because that's incorrect. Secondly, yes, Amazon...
Do y'all like how he talks to you? Do you feel as if he's respecting your questions and your time and your value?
You just interrupted me. You want to talk about respect? It's like you interrupted me.
Okay, Charlie, answer the question.
Okay, question. Amazon, good, lowers prices, employs a lot of people, creates a lot of value for shareholders. If you want to count it as a monopoly, they have cut prices and made products and life better for a lot of people. And your teacher unions.
Yes, so I want to hit what you said first, and then I'll go to the teachers union, Pete, I promise. But so this is the inherent fallacy of Turning Point's entire ideology, right? To say that they advocate for free markets when you have your founder on stage defending monopolies that then destroy competition, which is inherent of a free market. But how can you say that you want folks... Wait, hold on. So what if the next great Amazon idea is in this room? Right? What if it's in this room, right? But Amazon has such a monopoly on the market that you will never be able to get it created. And then they're not going to pay any taxes to fund your school, so then your kids aren't even going to be educated to actually go out and make the change that you so desperately want. You can't be talking about wanting to start a new business if you aren't out there advocating for our people.
Again, Amazon's not a monopoly. You brought it up. So tell me what they have a monopoly over.
So I want to go back to Shay's question because I actually respect the folks
you can't
that took
answer the
their time to
question
be
because
here.
you don't understand the company. Tell me what they have a monopoly over.
I don't get my shareholders report every week like you do.
Well, then why would you use it as an example?
I want to answer Shay's question.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad I use the capitalist system to make myself rich and other people better.
So I want to go back to the Amazon piece. Can I answer the initial question from the participant? Is that okay with you? Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. So going back to the issue about teachers' unions, right? I think we would both acknowledge that today, unions are weaker than they've ever been.
Yay.
Right? And that's a problem, right? And I do have problems when, go back to your hood. Now we're in your hood, right, in Chicago. We do have a problem where bad teachers have been protected, right? But at the same time, we know that not all teachers are being empowered to actually do their jobs in the first place. How can you ask a teacher in this state that's a member of the Arizona Education Association, right, to go out and teach? To go out and teach when their school isn't funded, their buildings are falling apart. right? We know that you might say they have a monopoly on it. I think that we should have unionized workers going to school districts, going to the state, saying that you have to value us, right? It's the teachers that make the education happen. I wouldn't be here without some great teachers, and I still remember them. And I remember them in the snow when you were attacking them. I remember listening to their stories about their pay. I remember listening to their stories about how they weren't sure that they would be able to afford to send their kids. And these are teachers. They're like, I don't know if I can stay in this district. I don't know if I can keep teaching you. And for a student, it's so hard to lose a teacher like that.
So how many teachers lost their job because of Scott Walker?
I don't have the immediate answer.
Answer the question. How many teachers lost their job because of Scott Walker?
I know that teachers quit.
Zero. Zero teachers were fired.
We can't cite that as a fact right now.
Zero teachers were fired because of the reforms he put past.
But were they able to actually bargain with their...
Yes, that's another lie. He did not get rid of the ability to collectively bargain.
Did you read Act 10? Because I was there.
Yeah, and he was reelected in the recall with more votes than he did.
That doesn't answer the question. That's an
No,
electoral
actually, because
success.
the
That's not
taxpayers
about
saw
Act
it.
10. Right?
No, yeah, Act 10.
Do you want to talk about Act 10? Because Act 10 is a
Please.
travesty.
I don't know if we actually have time for that.
It's 7:38.
Wait.
We're supposed to have it till 8.
We are going to wrap up around 7:45, so I think you two should do your closing
Okay.
statement.
Well, I think we
We
got
can
time
go
for one
another
more.
10 minutes, right? 10 minutes. Yeah, one more
Can we-
question.
Do you mind if we do one more question? It's up to you. You're the moderator.
Yeah, sure. One more question? How about over there? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I had a question for Randy. So
What's up, man?
When you're talking about privilege and stuff, you cited the net worth of white people, but Asians have a higher net worth, but you didn't include that in your talking point. May I ask why?
Yeah, absolutely. Right?
Because I mean, by your definition of white privilege, Asians have more privilege, so I don't really get it. It just sounds like race baiting.
So, woo! So I appreciate your question, and I thank you for coming. I value your time. What I would say is that Asian Americans do have privilege, right? I had privilege as a Latino, right? I had privilege where I grew up in Wisconsin, right? Privilege is not relegated just to white folks, right? That's not how privilege works. We know that privilege is how you interact with systems and how your experience is put together, right? So to answer your question, I'm not race baiting. Things are racial, right? There are racial outcomes that we have to deal with and put policies in place that actually acknowledge their reality, right? So when you look at that, right, I think that Asian Americans, if that was their actual net worth, and I don't have that statistic, so I apologize, but if that is what is going on, then they are also part of the solution, right? Wouldn't you say, can I ask him a question back? Wouldn't you say that we'd all be better off if people of color in this country felt two things? They felt valued by their community, and they felt as if they had economic opportunity in their community as well. Would you feel that way? How would you answer that?
I mean, I think a lot of them do, given the objective fact that Asians or people of color may do better than white people by every measure of economic success.
Oh my God, oh man.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. Asian Americans entered mostly in the 1940s and 50s, fleeing communism. They were the poorest ethnic group, poorer than African Americans when they entered in the flurry of refugees from Mao communism.
Are we gonna talk
Let me
about the
finish.
abuse on the railroad?
Let me finish. They entered extremely poor, made good decisions, created communities, and they went to college in record numbers, and now Asian Americans are the richest subracial group in the country. The Constitution was not written in Korean. The point being is this country can be successful no matter what race, color, religion, or language you speak. Even more than that. If you're trying to say that, oh, well, you know, it's different because there's institutional racism against black people. There is a lot and continues to be institutional racism against Asian Americans, but they overcame it. And in fact, if you talk to someone who fought in World War II, ask them what they used to call an Asian American person. We actually, if I remember correctly, we unconstitutionally put Asian Americans in internment camps in the 1940s. We treated them horribly. And instead of giving them government benefits, we empowered them. And now they are the richest subracial group in the country because they overcame the victimhood mentality that you are pushing.
So can you just outright say for me, please?
I'm sorry.
Can you outright say for me that you think black people think they're victims and so do Hispanics?
I think that you are putting forth a victimhood mentality. I think the left is trying to turn women into victims. They're trying to turn black people into victims. They're trying to turn Latino into victims. They're trying to turn transgender people into victims. They're trying to turn Muslims into victims. When in reality, America has been the greatest country in the history of the world because we've always risen above victimhood culture, because we've empowered the individual to rise above that. I think it's the left's doing, absolutely.
I have absolutely nothing to say in response to that.
So on that note, I think we'll go into closing statements. Randy, do you want to take over closing statements? Or? Yep.
90 seconds?
Yes.
We'll actually keep time this time? That's my fault, I apologize. So what I would say, and I want to thank you all for coming. I really appreciate your time and then your interest in what we have to say. I really do value the diverse opinions, and I think I've learned, and I hope that we've all learned that was the purpose of this event. But what I think that you see right now is you have two very different realities that Charlie and I are living in. Right? You have a reality where, as Charlie said himself, everyone can just make it, right? This is the old pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, where if you can just wake up and if you just want it bad enough, right? If you just want it bad enough, you can push down all those barriers that are put in place and you can just go and do it, right? But we know that's not true, right? I think he's right there. You can call me that I'm telling you I'm race baiting. I'm talking about real statistics and identity, and I want to talk about one piece before I close out. Turning point is dangerous, right?
To socialism, absolutely, yes.
And so the danger of turning point, right? And I do thank you all for facilitating this event, and I appreciate your civic engagement at a young age. But the danger of turning point is that they're couching this economic freedom argument, right, without acknowledging the inequities and realities of what it's like to be a person of color in there, right? And then fundamentally, when you are unwilling to talk about the racial aspect of issues, you are trying to take our power away, right? I found my power, right, as an organizer and as a person when I got here, and I realized that I was a part of a community, a Latino community, right? I even changed the way that I pronounce my last name. You knew me when I was Perez, right? And you can laugh at that, right? But it was such an important moment for me where I realized that there was so much more to what we were doing. So I thank you all for being here. I would encourage you to think. I would encourage you to continue to engage. And I just want to say that I do thank Charlie. I know that we got a little bit heated. We had fun backstage. And I think this is going to be one of many conversations that we continue to have.
Thank you. So I'm going to read something. So I'm going to just close together. You say you're not race baiting, that's fine. You could say that. But I wasn't going to bring this up, but I just have to. So you gave an interview to the Arizona State Press, and you said, quote, "What again would be a win for me is if I can find a way to deconstruct Charlie Kirk. I want to deconstruct the white, male, fragile privilege that goes into that ideology.
Yes.
I want to deconstruct the misogyny that goes into this ideology. I want to deconstruct the fundamental colorblind racism that is inherent in a lot of things that he writes in this book." Okay. Wow. So
That is
again,
completely correct. And I don't think that I did that tonight.
exactly. Of course not. Because this is the playbook of the left, right? Before the game even starts, call someone a racist. Say your policies are racist, colorblind racism.
That's not what I said.
You said my policies are You said I'm a misogynist. Let me reread it. Hold on a second. Come on. Hold on. You said, no, seriously, not you said. I want to deconstruct the misogyny that goes into the ideology.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm a misogynist now. I hate women. That's
No,
really interesting.
that's not what that means.
What does it
right?
mean?
When you look at this, right, and
I mean, seriously, it's a closing argument, but the point being, you can play the nice guy all you want and say, I was one of the rise all above it, but you came in here trying to make, this idea of white, male, fragile privilege. I will never judge someone by the color of their skin. Ever. You will.
you do it every day.
I do it every day? How dare you say that? How dare you say something like that? How dare you say I judge people by the color of their skin every single day? Seriously. I mean, what an astonishingly stupid claim for you to say. For you to say, I judge people by the color of their skin, while you come up and you say, I have white, male, fragile privilege. Who's being the racist here, folks? Who's the one actually saying that someone has skin color? I come up here, and what Turning Point USA espouses, and yeah, we are dangerous to the liberal left and socialists that want to destroy this country. Absolutely, we're dangerous to them. We're also advancing ideas that's going to continue to make America the greatest country in the history of the world, and expand economic freedom and opportunity, and protect the Constitution, which is the greatest political document ever written by man. But finally, I will continue to advocate for the rights of all Americans. And this is going to be the stumbling block. Are we going to go down a way that Europe went, where you go into this dangerously divisive and hateful color identity politics? Or are we going to do what Martin Luther King said? I believe he said, I dream of a day where you could be judged by the content of your character and not the color of your skin. And you are doing exactly the opposite. where you say you have white, male, fragile privilege and that I'm engaging in colorblind racism. Because in this country, as per the Asian American example and the Indian American example, if you make good choices and if we continue to expand economic freedom and opportunity, you can succeed. And only in this country is that possible. Thank you.
Frankly, the topic of taxes isn't the most attractive for young people, though tax reform can directly affect their future financial situation, their ability to buy things, the amount of money they receive. Why should millennials be interested in tax reform? Why should they care?
You first. Me?
I get it first? Well, they should care for a lot of different reasons. First and foremost, I believe taxation is theft. I believe you have the right to keep what you earn, you have the right to your time, and you have a right to be able to live the life as you see fit as long as it doesn't harm someone else. The United States of America has become one of the most, if not the most, taxed nations in the country, not just from a corporate level or personal income tax level, but from property tax to sales tax, from workers' tax, from a FICA tax. Our generation is being negatively penalized on every single corner for being successful, for creating value and wealth for yourself and those that you care about. When you're able to keep more of your own money and you're able to invest it as you see fit, everybody wins. At Turning Point USA, we believe that through free enterprise, let's just define what that means. That means you can buy what you want to buy, sell what you want to sell, work where you want to work, start whatever business you want to start, as long as it doesn't harm someone else. As long as that exists and you're able to adjudicate differences in an impartial court system, then honestly, human history has showed us that the bell curve continues to go up, poverty goes down, and everyone gets richer through equally benefited trade, value for value. So why should millennials care about taxes? Well, first and foremost, I'm sure all of you, one way or the other, have had an hourly job. One of the things that we talk a lot about that I wish politicians in D.C. would focus on is getting rid of the FICA tax. It's a tax on work. It is stealing millennials' money that we are never going to see again, into a Social Security trust fund that doesn't exist, into a Medicare fund to pay for something that we will never benefit from. It's a tax on work. It's a tax on time. It's a tax on labor. It's a tax on the middle class, and it's a tax on our generation. We should demand that Washington, D.C. politicians eliminate the FICA tax, or at least allow us to opt out of it so that we can keep the money we earn on every single paycheck. So if you're paid $10 an hour, you get $10 an hour right there as you work in real time. Thank you.
Randy, do you want to respond to that?
You want me to respond, or do you want me to do my own answer to the question?
You can respond if you feel inclined to respond, or you can answer the question if you would like.
Okay, great. So I think it's going to be easy to keep track of all the talking points, right? Big government sucks, socialism sucks, and taxation is theft. So I got it. I got the whole Turning Point ideology put together in less than 10 seconds. And that's one of the biggest problems that I have. I'm going to answer the question about why y'all should care about taxes. I don't know if you drove on a road today or breathed any clean air. But I think what is so fascinating is that we do this dive into issues where we don't take the time to truly and introspectively understand them, right? Some taxes are bad. Some taxes are too high. Some taxes paid for this room, for this school that we go to, right? And so we have to understand that as millennials, going back to the core of your question so that you don't yell at me, we should care about what it's going to look like when we graduate from school, or if you're not in school, right? We should care about the cost of our education and whether the state is adequately funding it, right? We should care if, when we want to have families one day, for some of us, are our kids going to be overtaxed, or are they going to get their money's worth from the government, right? These are questions that we as millennials, and so many of you here, you're clearly thinking about it, right? But what we really should be doing is not just making sure that we engage the political folks, and so many of you are, right, already civically engaged. But if you care about taxes, you should go talk to somebody about it, right? When you look at what your city council is levying on you, right? You should care about these things, right? And I think that you're going to see two very interesting and different perspectives tonight on what taxes can mean for you, not just today, not just tomorrow, but for the rest of your life. And that's what we really want to provide.
Okay, cool. I don't know if every response elicits applause. All right, so with that being said then, what are Republicans and Democrats doing, and what should both sides be doing to get millennials more interested in taxes and tax reform?
I think that both parties, we can agree on this, really struggle to engage young people because we don't want to identify with the Democratic Party, and we don't want to identify with the Republican Party. Right? I think that's something that you have done incredibly well, is find a niche, right, of free market ideology, and getting back to these first principles that you often talk about, that aren't being talked about by the Republican Party, right? And so if we're going to engage in a conversation about taxes or education or any of these issues that can often seem existential to us, we have to do it outside of the party structure, right? I've learned so much more as an organizer, and I've learned so much more and been able to empower so many more people, and they've empowered me. I wouldn't be here without them, by engaging on these issues and through school, right? I was able to go to this university, study political science, and that really piqued my interest in more policy side of things instead of just the storytelling piece. So I think that we need to work together to make sure that we are talking about these issues in a really fundamental way.
So kind of Republicans are not doing nearly enough. Democrats are trying everything they can to get within taxes getting cut and trying to raise taxes. So look, the Republican tax plan is not something I'm going to completely defend. It has some good things, has some not so good things, mostly spineless Republicans that are not willing to really take strong stands to fight for hardworking Americans that are getting penalized by an out-of-date tax system that favors the wealthy, the connected, and the few that have good offices on K Street. And that are used to work for Goldman Sachs, so we'll probably agree on that. Not that Obama was any better, by the way. I mean, he had Goldman Sachs running his whole cabinet, so let's make that completely. And as far as the soundbite things, yeah, I mean, we have good soundbites. They resonate, but it's not exactly, anything new in American politics coming from the hope and change, yes, we can forward thing. So yeah, sound bites are not exactly anything new. They're quite effective, and it's not just big government sucks, socialism sucks, taxation is theft. It's also free markets, free people, socialism, you make it, they take it. There's also sound bites, but sound bites are important because it's how you start a conversation. It's how you build a movement. Messages create movements. But what are Republicans doing? Not near enough. What are Democrats doing? Way too much to try to raise taxes. So let's talk about the story of the states. You look at the most bankrupt states in the country. They're run by Democrats with high taxes, and you see people fleeing. The reason why Arizona is prospering right now is because you have liberals. No, it is prospering. Okay, seriously, economic output is going up. Unemployment is going down. Property values are going up. Government revenues are going up. Business startups are going up. Entrepreneurship is going up. You can laugh all you want, but Arizona's doing well. So thank you for laughing at that, but let me make a point. The reason why Arizona's doing well, the reason why Wisconsin's doing well, and yeah, you can laugh at Wisconsin too, but I come from Illinois. It's not exactly a beautiful state, okay? We have term limits in Illinois. 1 term in office, 1 term in jail, okay? So 1 term in office, 1 term in jail. That's what we have in Illinois. So it's a little bit of a corrupt state, okay? Now, you might say, oh, Arizona's not doing that well. You think California's doing well? No. 50 cents on a dollar are going to negative pension payments. They are losing a citizen every 7 minutes. Arizona gains a citizen every 15 minutes. Why do you think that is? It's because of competitive tax policy, and it's, my friend, it's not because of the weather, okay? It's not. They have comparable climates, and final point, I know I'm getting cut off. You see the story of the states. Red states with low taxes, competitive economic climates that balance their budgets are exploding economically. Blue states, Connecticut, New Jersey, Illinois, California are a mess. They're bankrupt. They're not creating jobs. They are losing citizens. Illinois loses a citizen every 6 minutes. Think about that. They lose a taxpayer every 6 minutes. Why is that? 5% income tax in a very highly taxed region, unfunded pensions, and a broken state run by institutional Democrats that have gone completely nuts to raise taxes, highest property taxes in the nation. So go ahead, tell me why I'm wrong, but I'm right, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I think Charlie did his homework before he came to Arizona. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you caring about, our hood here. So folks that I've worked with here in Arizona, how are we doing? Are we doing okay? Do you feel as if you are valued here in Arizona if you are a person of color? In Arizona, do you feel as if you have access to a higher education system that works for you and not for the state? Do you feel as if you can start a business here? We're talking about startups, right? But we lose $12.6 billion every year in corporate tax giveaways, and we don't see a penny of it. I think Doug Ducey gave him his talking points because he's running for re-election next year. This is actually absurd that we're talking about Arizona as doing well, right? I came here and I was just shocked. I was so taken aback by the inequities and the lack of value that folks come from here, right? This is what we call privileged economics. Right?
Wow.
And I think,
wow.
So there's my talking point, right? Okay. No, this is important, right? So if you are a person who has privilege in this country, I think Arizona is doing great for you. If you are a part of an underserved community that needs advocacy and needs representation, it's not going so hot. And that's not a weather joke. It's great right now. But what I think you have to understand is that from Charlie's point of view, it does look good. It really looks good. From the rest of us, not so much. Not so much.
Okay, so there's a lot there to unravel. Privilege economics. So somehow, 30 seconds, fine. So I'll speak very fast, like Ben Shapiro, so you can kind of understand what I'm saying. Not really. Right, that's pretty good. So, wow, there's a lot to unravel there. But you didn't refute the point that red states that embrace economic freedom are doing a lot better than blue states that are completely bankrupt. You look at Illinois, you look at Connecticut, you look at New Jersey, you look at states with Democrat governors that have raised taxes, you see taxpayers leaving at a record rate, and you see red states like Florida, like South Carolina, like North Carolina, that have lowered their taxes. Let's look at Virginia. So they just re-elected the same policies that are driving Virginia negatively economically. Yet the surrounding states are outcompeting them. They're outcompeting them for jobs, for entrepreneurship, for business startups. But fine, let's talk about Arizona. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, Arizona State University is cutting edge with technological advances, increases with online learning. You actually, in-state tuition in Arizona State University, for out-of-state tuition in Arizona State University is lower than in-state tuition in California. So that's something that you should applaud. So you might say that you're unrepresented of color, but if you're a Latino student in-state here in Arizona, don't you still are able to pay in-state tuition too? I mean, like, that's the question. I mean, privilege economics, you could say that, it sounds really good, but what am I saying that is untrue if I wasn't a white male? Like, seriously, don't just use this kind of like privilege economics thing. It's the typical playbook of the left. It's such a lazy argument.
This is important. This is important. This is very important.
Randy, 30 seconds.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we'll move on.
Yes,
to the
ma'am.
next question.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm actually a Latino student at Arizona State University. And I actually am unable currently, I know it's crazy, huh? My last name is actually pronounced Perez. So if you look at what's happening, I'm gonna tell you my story. I love stories, right? It's my favorite thing to do.
I like 30 seconds.
You're gonna have a 15-second story. So I got to this university in 2014, and I was paying out-of-state tuition. I was lucky enough to receive a scholarship to go here, so I was paying about $24,000 before room and board, and gas and food and living. And then I'm actually not currently able to complete my degree because I'm not able to get those in-state benefits, right? I'm not able to do that. And when you look at the student body, it's not a true reflection of who needs to be served here in Arizona. It's not.
Okay, so can I respond to that? 30 seconds? That's a great point. So first of all, not everyone needs to go to college to succeed.
I agree.
Okay? And in Arizona, you see a huge explosion of welders, of plumbers, electricians, construction jobs, people that didn't need to get a 4-year GED to succeed. The community college scene in Maricopa County is exploding, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It should be applauded because students are then making the decision. They say, well, why do I need to go to ASU and pay $14,000 a year for in-state tuition? I can go get my class credits done at a local community college. And that's exactly what we advocate for at Turning Point USA, which is in a market, people are going to make the best decisions as they see fit, and it's going to benefit themselves and the people around them. The final point I'll say is this, and you still haven't refuted this. I really want you to talk about this. Why is it that the Democrat states are so screwed up and the Republican states are prospering? Economically, unemployment, they're creating more jobs, they're attracting more business. Why does Toyota move from California to Texas and jobs are not moving back into California? Why is it that Amazon is considering to move to Phoenix and they're not considering one city in California? Please tell me.
Unfortunately, I think that kind of strays away from the topic
Taxes?
of the debate.
Taxes are a very big thing of interstate commerce. Taxes are the best way to dictate the movement of people. I think it's extremely relevant. What are you talking about? So you can answer it or not, but fine.
Okay, Randy, 30 seconds, please.
So the reason that, to start at the end, that Amazon is not going to come to Phoenix, and the reason is because of our education system. We know that we're not investing in K-12 education, and we know, and I think you would acknowledge this as well, that when you have a strong school system that serves its entire population, not the rich white kids in Scottsdale, but actually serves the brown folks down in South Phoenix, who I talked to all of last year, talked to real people, then you do this thing where you realize that we're not living our values, and we're not serving our people, and we're not doing what we need to do as leaders civically. Right? And so they're never going to come here. But I need 10 seconds for the red state piece. Right?
The what?
The Democrat state you want to talk about, right?
Go ahead, 10 seconds. Good luck.
Yeah. So I'm from New Jersey, right? I'm from New Jersey. The pension system is broken, right? We know that we allowed politicians in New Jersey to continue to put unfunded liabilities, same as we have in Phoenix, where we have about a $4 billion, excuse me, more than that, I apologize, But we have this huge pension liabilities,
Yes.
right? And it's because we didn't do good economic policy in those states. And we know that if we had more progressive policies and more progressive Democrats that were elected, I do not believe that that would have happened. And when you're talking about a state like Texas,
Well, that's important. You'd want a state that has a funded pension like Wisconsin, like what Scott Walker did, right? Where you're from.
so
Right? 'Cause
you
he
know
funded
that we
pensions,
did that because
he
you
cut
got
taxes,
benefits.
unemployment is down,
That's a lie.
business is
He's
starting,
lying.
he's cut spending. That's a state you would appreciate.
you
You're
lied.
the state of
It's not
Wisconsin.
true. Charlie, that's not true. You
He-
know it's not
he's
true.
won re-election time and time again.
this
He's
is what's
balanced the
interesting
budget,
about
funded
Charlie.
pensions.
All right.
It's not true.
I think rule number 3 was to not interrupt each other. Yeah?
We had so much fun backstage.
We are.
It wasn't in front of the cameras though, so.
We are going to rein it in and move on to the next question. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we've spent about 5 minutes on that one alone, so I think we're going to continue on. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders garnered strong millennial support with his Robin Hood tax plan to pay for college tuition. The Robin Hood tax plan would implement a 0.5% tax on Wall Street transactions and would generate hundreds of billions of dollars each year, according to the senator. How would this kind of tax plan affect millennials?
You want to go in?
So we know with this, I'm not a supporter of this senator, and I don't want to dive into his tax plan that I'm not currently aware of, but we do know that the wealthy are not paying enough in taxes in this country to fulfill their moral obligation to the rest of us to really make sure that we live in an equitable society that lives our values, right? I think we can start off with that point. So when we look at the underfunding of the state education system here in Arizona, and actually, I don't know if you know this, but they actually cut all funding from Maricopa County community colleges last year. So now they get no funding from the state and no help, so tuition will go up because the state is not fulfilling its obligations to its students. So when you look at what's happening with these tax plans from the senator and even tax plans that are trying to be adopted on a local level, we're trying to make sure. It's a lie to say that the wealthy are paying too much in taxes, right? The rest of us are paying too much in taxes, right? If you look at what's currently coming out of Washington, they're trying to blow up the deficit by $1.75 trillion in order to give people's rich friends and their donors a tax cut, right? That they don't need. 80% of the content of that bill benefits the wealthy. The rest of you, nothing. Nothing. If you are a teacher, you can't deduct the cost of the school supplies that you have to buy here in Arizona because the state isn't going to fund you, right? We know that this is all a lie, right? There's nothing behind this, right? So when we look at a tax proposal like that from the senator, where he's talking about the wealthy paying their fair share, I think everybody's taxes should be lower. I think the system should be more simple. I think that the wealthy actually need to stop paying sometimes 10% in taxes, 0% in taxes. Corporations need to pay their fair share. We know that's not happening, especially here in Arizona. So I think that we need to look at this tax policy not from a partisan lens, which I think we would agree on, but from one that works for real people and not the wealthy few.
Charlie, you want to?
Yeah, so let's talk. You keep on saying we all know. No, actually, we don't all know. Okay, so stop saying that because let's talk about math. Okay, first of all, you work for the Obama Foundation. You're a big Obama fan. Please don't mention the deficit. Okay, he borrowed $10 trillion in 8 years, the most out of any president. Okay, so you're not exactly a credible figure to critique the sitting president on that. Number one. Okay. Number two. So you say we all know the wealthy are not paying their fair share. No, actually, we don't. Okay, so the top 5% of taxpayers pay 80% of all the taxes. That's math. So would you agree that 55% that pays 80% of all the taxes, there's something not exactly equitable about that? Now, the United States also has the highest corporate tax rate in the world. It's not the highest effective corporate tax rate, but it's the highest on paper, 38% corporate tax rate. Now, you could talk about corporate handouts and corporate favors. You'll have a lot of agreement with me. But you say, this GOP tax plan doesn't help anyone here. Have you ever gotten a job from a poor person? Seriously. Have you ever gotten a job from a poor person? You haven't. It is wealthy people, it's businesses, entrepreneurs that have money, have capital, that start businesses. It took an investor to make Mark Zuckerberg be able to grow Facebook. It took an investor to be able to have YouTube get off the ground. It took an investor to sit with Jeff Bezos in the office and say, you know what? I got a bunch of money. I'm going to put $2 million into your company. And you know what? He created over $600 billion of value in 5 years. So you can bash the rich paying their fair share. You know what? The taxes on the wealthy are too high. They're too high on all of us. Because Washington, D.C. brought in $4.4 trillion last year. What if they only spent $4.4 trillion? The government is way overfunded. Taxes are far too high. Corporations are taxed at a much too high level. Individuals are taxed at too high of a level. And we, as millennials, go back to my original point, tie it all together, have a tax on work. They're stealing money from our paychecks every single day. Through that FICA tax, it's an invisible tax. It's money we're never going to see again. We should demand to fight back against it. But to wrap up the whole point, no, we actually don't all know. The rich are paying far too much in taxes. If we cut the taxes on everyone, including small business owners, on corporations, and on businesses, you will see an explosion of economic growth that will highly benefit every single person in this room. Thank you.
So something that you said I thought was so interesting, and I thought the reaction that I had to it was interesting too, where I didn't feel angry, I just felt really bad for you, and just really sad, that you would lean and so hard on these folks, right? The Amazons, the Ubers, the YouTubes, right? All of these folks that did this really top-end stuff, right? These really great things, and there's such great innovations, right? And a lot of them happened under Obama, especially Uber, which you don't mention in your book. But what I find is so interesting is that you can't be for free markets if you just have these highlights, reels of what's not and you're not including what's happening to small businesses on the ground, right? You can't be for these free markets when we have monopolies, right? Those companies you're talking about have monopolies on their industries, right? And it's not going to allow the competition that you say that you want to flourish underneath them unless we raise their taxes, help pay for the competition that we need to facilitate, right? That's never going to happen. You're living in fantasy land.
What you're talking about.
Okay.
Seriously. Like, what monopoly? Tell me a monopoly right now.
Okay, great.
One.
One monopoly.
Tell me a monopoly right now.
Let's not.
No, seriously. Put them on. No, this is important. No, tell me a monopoly that exists right now.
Amazon.
And you have a problem with it because they charge so little and they undercut prices and deliver things to you in 24 hours or less? And they employ 50,000 people and they're able to bring down the price of goods for everyone? That is a terrible, awful thing.
Do you work for Amazon?
I'm a shareholder, so they are I have leverage over them, and they've increased my net worth by
Yes,
over
he has
$3,000
Jeff
over the
Bezos'
last 3
phone
years.
number, and he calls him whenever he has a problem with their
No,
current
but
marketing strategy.
the thing is
But yeah,
that-
so I do have a problem with monopolies, right? This country was
but
founded on
name
the
a monopoly.
idea.
Name a monopoly. Seriously.
I just did. Amazon.
And you have a
right?
problem with them? They make everyone's lives better instantaneously.
You
They cut prices.
just said that. You just said that.
And you said nothing. So
Let me continue.
Why don't we move on to the next question?
This is fun. This is what a debate's all about, though.
Time to finish your thought?
I'd like to finish one thought,
Please.
if you don't mind. And I'm going to say something that I hope that you find valuable. Right? When this country was founded, right, and we saw these great economic engines happen during the Industrial Revolution, throughout the 20th century, and to today, right? I want to ask you a question, actually, Ken, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
What do you value more? What do you value more? A mom and pop shop down the street, struggling to get by, that needs help from the government, right? That needs a tax break, right? And the only way that can be funded, right, is if the wealthy and corporations start to pay more, right? Would you be willing to take that trade, right, to help break up these monopolies? Because monopolies are fundamentally un-American, right? It's un-American to not have competition. That's an American value. You say it all the time.
It's such a convoluted way to look at it. And first of all, it's leading the witness, so shame on you for that. Number two,
I'm not a lawyer.
what would you rather have, a mom and pop store dying on the street or being a wealthy tax cut? I want economic freedom, okay? I
you
want
don't.
businesses to be able to pursue their own self-interest,
I don't think
create
so.
value for their shareholders, be able to employ people, and create products and goods and services that benefit us all. But let's use an example. You know what's another monopoly? Facebook's a monopoly. How much do they charge you for Facebook, by the way? Oh, they give it away for free.
They sell your
give it
data.
away. You have to see a couple ads in your newsfeed. Boo-hoo. You get a
sell your
product
data.
that you get to
They
communicate
sell
with
ads.
someone all the way across the world. And I don't use Facebook. You use Instagram, so don't lie to me. I get that all the time. The point being is, there's all these horrible monopolies. You can't name one. You probably talked about Amazon. That created a flourishment of wealth.
Oh my God.
Cut prices and goods and services for
I
everyone
hope
in
he
this
gives
room.
you a discount on your shares.
I'm sorry? Actually, my shares have gone up, and I've created a lot of value, and all pension funds that have invested in Amazon have also got equally as wealthy and rich. So I would say that everyone who's been involved in Amazon has been a net winner, and Amazon has voluntarily decided to lose money so that consumers can have products and goods and services for less money. They incorporated Amazon Prime free of charge so that you can get something in 24 hours or less. They're able to cut and slash prices for all consumers. They're a deterrent against deflation. They're a $600 billion company that employs 50,000 people. They're considering an investment here in the Phoenix metro area, and that's the best example you have of an evil monopolistic entity that needs to be taxed more. You need to reconsider that.
GE, Walmart.
We are going to
Well, Walmart's not a monopoly, but go ahead.
You're going to rein this in. The question was about Bernie Sanders.
Oh, let's talk about Bernie Sanders. Fine. Bernie Sanders is a fraud.
That's not what she was asking for.
I love you, Bobby. Sure.
Seems like it's a theme, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
All right. So Kentucky Republican Senator, we're going to be talking about education.
Yep.
Now, Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul said Americans wouldn't notice if the United States Department of Education was gone tomorrow. And other senators like Joni Ernst from Iowa noted that the U.S. Department of Education's role is non-essential. So how would you define the Department of Education's role currently, and is it quote-unquote non-essential? Charlie?
It should be abolished instantaneously. It should have been abolished yesterday. So let me make something clear. Just because you want to abolish federal involvement in something does not believe that you're somehow anti-education. Let me make that first and foremost clear. We have spent collectively over $5 trillion on public education in inner cities since 1960, and we have seen test scores go down. We've seen unemployment skyrocket. We've seen poverty get worse. We've seen the quality of education get worse. Literacy rates get worse. So just throwing money at a problem means absolutely nothing. Okay? The Department of Education is one of the most inefficient, ineffective, bloated federal bureaucracies that you will ever come across. I believe that parents should be actively involved in selecting and choosing where their kid goes to school. I don't believe a zip code should determine a child's future. We'll probably agree at that. But I also believe that public sector teacher unions are the greatest threat to impoverished African American and Latino youth to be able to have a better life. Public sector teacher unions protect bad teachers. They bring down the quality of education. They punish taxpayers. They deter competition. And I mean, you look no further than what I've seen in Chicago, where you have teachers earning $120,000 a year, and you have 18% of the students that walk out of high school that can't read. Where I went to high school, the average gym teacher earned $132,000 a year, and they had to get a pension of $140,000 a year to teach gym. In our school district, we had over 150 teachers at that same clip. Chicago public teachers are also very similar to that. Final, should the Department of Education be abolished? Absolutely yes. Allow the free market to involve itself heavily in education, charter schools, vouchers, competition. Let individuals, free people make free decisions. In a free society, you're going to see good things happen. We have seen an atrocity, a disaster in this country, what's happened in inner schools with government-run education, and it's harmed the least of these, the most African American, Latino youth. It's a moral outrage. Abolish the Department of Education. Thank you.
So the average teacher pay, just to get really quickly started on, again, you're in my hood, so I know this stuff. But the average teacher pay in Arizona is less than $50,000, right? I know you grew up in a rich white suburb outside of Chicago.
A middle class area right outside of O'Hare, but thank you for categorizing me again.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
I mean, so with average property values less than what it is in Northeast Phoenix and 6 of the wealthiest counties in America.
Did you go to public school?
Yeah, actually I did. I went to Wheeling High School,
a
public high school. What, tell you about it?
Yeah.
Way overfunded. Teachers that did nothing earning $150,000 a year. Gym teachers earning $130,000 a year. Waste everywhere. New laptops every other year. Plasma screen TVs put in every hallway. Teachers that should be fired that weren't. New buildings erected just because they had excess money. Gymnasiums that were completely wasteful. You want to tell about my public education. I had great teachers and bad teachers. Bad teachers should have been fired. Good teachers should have got raises. Who prevented that? Public sector teacher unions. Thank you for asking about my education, by the way.